Good morning. Today let's directly address the question of what foods need a Hechsher. Yesterday we explained there are two different approaches to the laws of Pesach. We do find the stringency of Pesach, the fact that food does not become nullified on Pesach if Chametz falls into it. And according to the Shulchan Aruch, that's the main stringency. All other leniencies which we find in the context of kashrut during the rest of the year apply on Pesach as well. According to the Rama, however, he's stricter, and there are certain stringencies which don't apply during the rest of the year, which do apply on Pesach. So let's now talk about some basic foods, whether they need hechsher or not for Sfaradim. So things like salt, sugar, tea, coffee, oil, do they need a hechsher? So according to what we've explained yesterday, there would be no reason why these things would need a hechsher. And let me explain why. Provided, of course, that these things are bought before Pesach. And the reason is as follows. We've said that the unique halakha of Pesach, that if chametz falls into food on Pesach, then the entire food becomes prohibited, is only when it happens on Pesach itself. If it happens before Pesach, then that becomes nullified in 160. And so these kinds of foods, salt and sugar, etc., it's highly unlikely that chametz has fallen into it. Even if chametz has fallen into it, it's not going to be a 60th of chametz falling into it, because legally it would be required to put in the ingredients anything which is, and any ingredients have to be put in. And sometimes people think that the law is that something which is less than 2% does not need to be included in ingredients. That's incorrect. Legally, all ingredients have to be listed. The only difference is if the ingredients are less than 2%, they don't need to be listed in quantitative order, as opposed to other ingredients which do need to be listed in quantitative order. Less than 2%, they don't have to be put in any order. They can just be mentioned, but they have to be mentioned. And so if the ingredients don't mention any chametz in it, there's no reason to assume that any chametz has fallen into it. Even if a drop of chametz has fallen into it, let's say someone's been eating over it, one of the people working there have been eating something chametz over it and it's fallen in, that would be nullified 1/60th before Pesach. Perhaps you'll say that once Pesach arrives, then this is reawakened, i.e., that now that Pesach has come, therefore this chametz now becomes prohibited. That we already explained yesterday, that we Sfaradim hold that once it's been nullified before Pesach, it's permissible on Pesach itself. And therefore, there would be no reason to require hechsher for these kinds of foods. Moreover, like we explained yesterday, we're not machzik isur. We don't presume that something bad has happened, that prohibited food has fallen in, unless there's a reason to suspect that's happened. So, if the ingredients are not chametz, then there's no reason to assume that something may have fallen into it. And therefore, for these reasons, it's permissible to buy these things without a hechsher. Let me tell you something which you may find surprising, but this is what Chacham Ovadia ruled, and it makes complete sense according to what we've learned. Chacham Ovadia talks about a case where you have wine, which this wine was set aside for the 4 cups on Pesach night, and some bread falls into that wine. And what would you say? You would think to yourself, of course you can't use that for Pesach. But says Chacham Ovadia, if this happened before Pesach, it's absolutely fine to use this wine, presuming it's been strained. Why? Because if you strain the wine, then all that will be left in the wine are some very small crumbs. And because those crumbs have fallen into the wine from before Pesach, they will be nullified in 1/60th. 1/60th will be nullified. And that's not going to reawaken on Pesach itself. And therefore, that wine may be used on Pesach. And you can drink it for the 4 cups of wine. Similarly, another extreme example, he talks about wheat, upon grains of wheat which water has fallen upon, and that becomes chametz. And those grains accidentally became mixed in with grains of wheat which are designated for the baking of matzot for Pesach. And these are going to be used for the matzot. Says Chacham Ovadia that as long as there are 60 times more of the non-chametz grains, this may be used for matzot on Pesach. Why? Because this has happened before Pesach. It's become nullified 1/60, and that doesn't reawaken on Pesach itself. And therefore, they may be used even for matzot. he talks about many more things. He talks about the dried fruit, don't need Hechsher. And the conclusion from what we need to understand from what we've discussed today and yesterday is that for Sfaradim at least, any food which is natural, the ingredients are all there, one can assume that that is kasher lePesach. Things like salt, sugar, tea, coffee and oil, these things do not need a Hechsher, because as we've said, even in the worst case scenario where chametz has fallen into it, they will be nullified 1 in 60, and that will be permissible on Pesach itself. However, these things should be bought before Pesach, because as we said, the nullification needs to take place before Pesach. For the Ramah, for Ashkenazim, it's stricter, and seemingly he would require Hechsher for these things. But what we've discussed today is the halachot for Sfaradim, who may rely on these natural ingredients to buy them and use them for Pesach. I hope this helps. Have a wonderful day, and as always, feel free to ask any questions.